disagreements. Do you think that Jake's gotten better as a boxer?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And listen, what Jake Paul has accomplished is he's fighting old guys.
Dana White has just confirmed what many thought impossible: Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor. This announcement has left fans and fighters alike scratching their heads. How did a YouTuber turned boxer manage to secure a fight with one of MMA's biggest names, especially with McGregor, a veteran who hasn't been in the ring for years? Welcome to the Fight Game, where skill...
Yeah, he'll never do that, though. He knows. He knows way.
One, he's under contract. And
he's
two,
not his own boss.
And two, he won't do it. He knows better. He might
and it's funny to say, like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's
still isn't the only currency. Spectacle sells. Jake Paul's rise isn't just about his abilities, it's about the money and drama he brings, and Dana White knows this better than anyone. For him, this matchup isn't just about combat, it's about turning heads, filling seats, and breaking the internet.
Yeah, so you never thought, it's just like another little world, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm all...
The idea of Jake Paul facing Conor McGregor would have sounded absurd just a few years ago. Yet here we are, with White himself confirming it. Yes, the same Dana White.
Jake Paul, Conor McGregor. Is that fight happening or what?
Probably not, no.
Are you closed off to it completely?
I'm never...
Who once dismissed Paul as a TikTok clown playing dress-up in the fight world is now all in, making deals, shaking hands, and flipping the combat sports script. But why now? Why Jake Paul and Conor McGregor? While the money involved is undeniably massive, this isn't just a random cash grab. It's a carefully calculated move designed to push boundaries and redefine what sells in combat sports.
What we do here is completely different than what him and his brother are doing. You know what I mean? I'm looking for the absolute best in the world. These guys who have trained their whole life, they fight in these smaller shows and then they make it to the UFC, and we put the best together.
Love it or hate it, this fight feels more like a circus act than a legitimate competition. But that's the ironic reality of today's fight scene. Dana White's latest move to keep the fight game ahead of the curve is both bold and calculated. Jake Paul stepping into the octagon against Conor McGregor. It's a fight that throws tradition out the window, tapping into a younger audience while keeping longtime fans grumbling. But
to say, like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's
still watching. Love it, hate it, or tweet angrily about it, you're paying attention, and that's exactly the point. Let's talk about Jake Paul for a second.
He did that tonight, but at the same time, you can't lose sight of the fact that man 58, man. But I'm not disappointed about it because it's a 58-year-old man that got whipped himself in that kind of shape to come in here and at least stand in front.
The YouTuber turned boxer turned MMA hopeful thrives on controversy. Remember when he publicly called out Conor McGregor? No weight class restrictions, straight MMA. And why not? Jake just bulked up to fight Mike Tyson.
He has a big name in the UK. The Pauls, that Tyson fight is just a strange one to me. I hope Tyson takes his nose off. I'm sure at some stage. We'll go through all.
A literal icon of obliterating opponents, even at 58. Jake beat him, and now thinks he's ready to take on McGregor, a.k.a. the Irish Tornado. Conor, unsurprisingly, didn't take this lying down. The man who turned trash talk into an art form fired back, calling Jake the biggest pissbag I've ever seen in my life. But Jake wasn't fazed. Instead, he doubled down. Trolling, tweeting, dropping videos, and staying in the spotlight.
To say, like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's truth. And look at him go toe-to-toe with Nate Diaz, who...
This fight isn't just about skill, it's about spectacle, and whether you're cringing or cheering, it's impossible to ignore. The noise around Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor has become impossible to ignore.
The YouTuber nerds could be like, I would consider that a nixer. Your uncle's friend needs a radiator fitted in his house, so he'll do a side job and get a side pay. I would consider them guys to be.
And that's exactly how Jake planned it. This isn't just a fight anymore. It's a full-blown spectacle. It's the kind of matchup you tell your friends about, even if they've never watched MMA. Jake knows how to command attention, and his timing is, as always, impeccable. Fresh off wins against Nate Diaz and
Conor has 2 fights left on his fight deal, but the UFC is trying to renew their rights deal because they license their content, which are the fights, to platforms. So they're trying to renew their deal with their negotiating multiple people, but let's say it's going to go with
Mike Tyson. Jake Paul is brimming with confidence, but this fight isn't just about Jake's ego or Conor's comeback. It's about reshaping combat sports. A YouTuber stepping into the MMA cage against a legacy fighter like McGregor isn't just a match. It's a seismic event. This fight is bigger than MMA.
And
he's
two,
not his own boss.
And 2, he won't do it. He knows better. He might
And it's
say,
funny to say, like, yo, Conor McGregor is scared of Jake Paul and will never box him, but it's the
or boxing. It's the ultimate crossover. And Conor? He's not just sitting back. With 2 fights left on his UFC contract, the timing is perfect for him too. Meanwhile, the UFC is renegotiating its broadcast rights, and having McGregor headline such a hyped event gives Dana White massive leverage. This isn't just a fight bull
and get him the most amount of money. So a part of that negotiation is, hey, we have Conor McGregor for 2 more fights. But if he were to fight now, that wouldn't be a part of the negotiation.
It's a masterstroke by Dana. Love it or hate it, Jake versus Conor is turning combat sports into a global spectacle. Here we are watching Jake Paul tweet his way into a fight no one thought possible.
He'd be like, oh yeah, well you only have Conor for one fight. So that's why Conor's not fighting right now. And this is what they do to the fighters is if you sign the contract that you didn't sign, if you win, then you're like locked in for 3 more fights or something like that. And there's each contract is different, but you basically don't want to win because then you're
and Conor McGregor, the king of comebacks, gearing up for what could be the most bizarre and talked about clash in fight history. Is this about respect? No. Legacy? Maybe, at least for Conor. Money? Absolutely. But more than anything, it's about 2 worlds colliding in the loudest and most chaotic way imaginable. McGregor's contract situation is its own soap opera. The man hasn't fought in the octagon in over 2 years, and the reason? The UFC's ironclad contract clauses. Essentially, they own him until he fulfills his obligations. And right now,
He shouldn't even be fighting Conor McGregor. These guys are huge. He's huge. His brother's huge. I mean, what's your brother? 6'1"?
Yeah.
210?
Yeah.
Conor McGregor's 145, 155 pounds.
Oh, he fights that low. I thought he fights like 160. I thought he fights like 165,
He's looking a bit thick now. He's looking.
the UFC is knee-deep in renegotiating its broadcast rights. Having a name like McGregor's in the mix gives Dana White unparalleled leverage. Conor, meanwhile, isn't shy about expressing his frustration. He's been vocal about feeling owned and operated by the UFC, even hinting at dissatisfaction with the control they have over his career. But one thing's clear, McGregor versus Paul is a spectacle no one can ignore. Conor McGregor has hinted at legal battles if he doesn't get the fights he wants, but this clash with Jake Paul might be Dana White's masterstroke, a win-win.
What about you and Conor McGregor? Are you interested in that?
Yeah, he'll never do that, though. He knows. He knows way.
One, he's under contract.
That delivers what the UFC needs and what Conor craves, a lucrative, high-profile showdown. McGregor hasn't fought since July 2021 when he suffered a brutal leg break against Dustin Poirier. That's a long layoff, and in the fight world, ring rust is real. On the other hand, Jake Paul has stayed busy, hopping from fight to fight with something to prove because
Paul saying he was banned from all UFC events and then put the costume on.
Yeah, nobody's banned from the UFC. Listen, that kid knows how to market.
Let's face it, he does. Then there's the glaring weight difference. Jake Paul walks around at a solid 190 pounds, while McGregor has spent most of his career fighting at 155. That 40-pound gap is massive in combat sports. How will it play out in the octagon? Will Jake's size and power...
All have had your disagreements. Do you think that Jake's gotten better as a boxer?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And listen, what Jake Paul has accomplished is he's fighting old guys.
Yes.
He's fighting, all he fights are old guys and whatever. But listen, say what you want, he wins. And he makes...
Dominate? Or will Conor's speed and technique prove too much for the younger fighter? This fight isn't just a spectacle, it's a fascinating clash of styles, eras, and ambitions. Let's not underestimate Jake Paul's growing reputation. He's gone from being a punchline to becoming a legitimate name in combat sports. Sure, purists still roll their eyes, but even they can't deny the numbers he's pulling. For Conor McGregor, this fight is a chance to remind everyone who he is. Injuries, time off, and distractions aside, he's still the Notorious. Enter Dana White, the man who spent years scoffing at Jake Paul, dismissing him as a social media clown, trying to...
I would consider that a nixer. Your uncle's friend needs a a radiator fitted in his house, so he'll do a side job and get a side pay. I would consider them guys to be
infiltrate the fight world. Dana mocked his boxing career, called his fights a joke, and even compared him to a TikTok star auditioning for the Olympics. And now, he's greenlit Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor, delivering the ultimate plot twist. This isn't just a fight, it's a gamble. Dana's rolling the dice like his entire Las Vegas empire depends on it. The irony is undeniable. Jake Paul, once the UFC's ultimate nuisance, is stepping into their world with his fists up and his social media army in tow. And let's talk about Jake's wild card, shamelessness. He's not afraid to negotiate fight rules that tilt in his favor, like oversized gloves. If there's a loophole, Jake will find it. Even controversy fuels his brand. He turned a split-decision loss to Tommy Fury into a full-blown marketing campaign, complete with tweets, memes, and endless press coverage. This fight is a spectacle packed with unpredictability, where reputations, egos, and the future of combat sports collide. Love him or hate him, Jake Paul has made it impossible to look away. And then there's Conor McGregor. His temper is as stable as nitroglycerin in a blender. McGregor's unpredictability is as much a part of his brand as his devastating left hook. Could he lose it during the press tour? Absolutely. Could that spill over into the fight itself? You bet. And let's be honest, that chaos only makes the whole thing more entertaining. But what about the fallout? No matter who wins, the ripples will be massive. If Jake Paul does the unthinkable and beats Conor McGregor in an MMA fight, it's game over for his doubters. He won't just be a YouTuber dabbling in combat sports, he'll be the face of crossover fights, the guy who toppled a UFC icon in his own domain. At that point, who could say no to Jake Paul? Certainly not Dana White. Jake would have the leverage to demand even bigger fights, maybe even a UFC title shot. Crazy? Sure, but so is this entire fight. And if McGregor wins, it's the comeback story of a lifetime. Conor, the man written off by half the MMA world, steps back into the spotlight and reclaims his throne. A win over Jake Paul doesn't just boost McGregor's ego, it solidifies his status as the ultimate crossover king, a fighter who can take on anyone, anywhere, and come out on top. It's the kind of victory that erases narratives of injuries and inactivity, putting him back into the headlines for all the right reasons. Beyond this fight, the ripple effect could inspire a wave of crossover matchups, redefining what's possible in combat sports. This isn't just a fight, it's a shift in the fight game itself.